Welcome to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories of addiction, grief, recovery, and courage. And also from people who work every day in the field of substance abuse who discuss their experiences and advice. I'm Mike Torville, your host. Thank you all for joining us. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at Healing Voices Project. We're glad to have you back. Today, I have Chris Denton, a mutual friend, a friend of a friend who I've gotten to know over the past month or so. Chris is from Colorado Springs, which means he had to wake up extra early to join us here this morning. Thanks for doing that and coming in with us this morning. Really appreciate that. Now, I have to say, in the short time that I've gotten to know Chris over the last month or so, I've been inspired by his story, his enthusiasm, his passion to help others who are struggling with substance abuse, and also his work with veterans. At almost a year sober, Chris is already making a difference in people's lives, and I think today his message will continue with that mission. So welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us here at Healing Voices Project. Glad to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Hey, I'm going to add one quick thing in because I got to say, you really do have a way of motivating people, and I can speak from personal experience. And I never got to tell you this, but a few weeks ago, is it 4 weeks now, I've had knee replacement surgery. And you're going through the recovery and sitting on the couch and going from the bed to the couch, and you and I have had some conversations. And I got to say, you've got a way about your voice when after getting off the phone with you, I figured I'm going to get my ass off this couch. I'm going to go do something. I just feel lifted up. So I think you have that effect on other people too.
Well, it's not something, I guess it's something I was born with. I don't really, I don't know how. People tell me that, and I just, I'm speechless because it's just everything that I say comes from the heart, and it's what's on my mind, and
yeah,
it's just the path I guess I'm traveling.
Well, I guess it comes through loud and clear, and so you've already made a difference in getting my butt off the couch. So, thanks for that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, you've got so much to your journey, your story, and how and where you are today. And I know we spoke about, given just about a year ago, if you could ever in a million years picture yourself doing what you're doing today versus where you are a year ago and further back. I forgot how you put it, but you said not in a million years would you have ever thought you'd be doing what you're doing today, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, I was, I talked to my dad last night and was telling him, a couple of things. And my father's been just a huge influence in my life. And I just adore the man to death. And I mentioned that. I said, I've been thinking about the last year and what would I have, if somebody would have told me that I'd be advocating for the normalcy of sobriety, I would have called him all kinds of things, a liar being number one. I never would have dreamed that I would be in this position doing the things that I'm doing. I didn't want to get sober. I had no intentions, no desire.
Well, if you don't want to, your chances of success are pretty slim. That's number one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just turned into something that is, honestly, it's been a blessing. It's been a lifesaver for me. And I want to share that with the world. And the mission is to normalize sobriety.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To make it as normal as going to the bar after work.
Yep, exactly. And I think you're right. It's not normalized as it ought to be. But I think you're right on that one. By the way, I got to say, I like your T-shirt. It's okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's okay not to be okay. So,
right.
Yeah, that's a great shirt. Is there a back to it?
No, there's nothing on the back. Okay. This is actually one that I got from a good friend, Raul, down in Texas. He runs the Charlie Mike military apparel store, and he's got a lot of great shirts like this that are trying to bring to light, the message. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
it's not okay to do nothing,
That's a good point.
and so his message is really powerful. And I just love the shirt. I love what it means.
Well, it's right there, and for those listening, that's the message right on the purchase. It's a black shirt with white letters that say "It's okay not to be okay," and that's a pretty clear message there. But well, Chris, I guess to go back, we could say to give some background, what led you to where you are today. Why don't we start at the beginning and say how did you start with your story, and how did it lead you to where you are today?
Well, the start of it really, I grew up in an alcoholic home. So at a very, very young age, I was exposed to it. My father, who again is my hero, I love the man to death, worked, he worked two jobs trying to pay the bills for the family there. And he would come home and have a couple of beers. And I thought that was normal. And, for people that can, have one or two, it is normal. But when you go to the extremes, 12, 15, then there's a problem. And so all throughout my life, that's what I would do. I was, a one or two a day guy. And it got to a point to where the one or two turned into three or four.
How did that? What do
And then,
you think sparked? I say sparked. What do you think? How did that evolve from one or two to getting more out of control? What
well,
changed?
I think the one or two realistically just takes the edge off the stress. Like if you're dealing with something that is unbearable, that one or two will slow things down enough to where you can breathe and go, okay, I can reset, especially if you have a hyperactive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the one or two stops working, it turns into three or four because the tolerance is built up.
Yeah. Yep. And with in your case, you started in just increasing because you had a tolerance, and you say, hey, if I'm going to feel this effect, one or two isn't cutting it. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's exactly where it went. And then, you know, you, you just don't realize it sneaks up on you. It's not like coming up to a stoplight that's red and it turns green. You don't have that visual cue. You don't have that. There's no reaction. It just creeps. The longer you go through it, the more severe it becomes. And you have no idea it's even happening.
How did you, well, how did you recognize it, or did somebody else have to inform you, hey, Chris, you got a problem, or was it your own recognition that made you aware?
It was a hospital trip.
Oh, well, that'll do it. Yeah.
That'll do it all the time. And the story kind of bounces back and forth a little bit because the alcohol, it turned into needing more and wanting more. And so that addiction, the addictive portion of that took over. And I wound up in the hospital for 3 days last year in the VA hospital in Denver.
Well, when you say, and
Um,
not to interrupt you, when you say you wound up in the hospital, it's not like you just said, yeah, I think I need to go to the hospital. What got you there? What events landed you in the
so,
hospital? Yeah.
so my morning routine, and this is really, really kind of the nuts and bolts of how it happened. My morning routine was I would get up and instead of drinking coffee like I do today, I would get up and I would bring out my laptop into my favorite chair and I would sit down and I would cut up a line of cocaine to wake myself up. And the reason being is I had drank so much the night before just to be able to sleep that I was still hungover. I was probably still drunk more times than not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take a shower and I would come back and I would do it again. And then I would go to work. So that Tuesday morning, I did that routine, got to work, and about an hour into the job, my hands just started shaking violently and I couldn't stop it. And I knew at that point, okay, here comes the overdose. This is it. This is how I die. And I just started walking. I didn't tell my employer anything. I just left, walked out of the job.
To go
I got
where?
about a half, huh?
To go where? To back to your car or
No, I had to get out of there.
okay, yeah.
I just could not be in that place. I had to do something. I was uncomfortable. I couldn't sit. I couldn't think. I couldn't concentrate. Like I said, my body just started shaking. And so as I started walking, I pulled out my phone and I sent my location to a couple of friends of mine. And I said, this is it. This is where you're going to find me. I made it to a little park not too far from the job there. And about 20 minutes later, they pulled up. Luckily, I didn't, experience any major overdose or anything like that. Um, Nothing that was detrimental at that point. They made the assessment, and they're like, "Man, you need to go to the hospital."
How'd you get there?
And so they drove me to the hospital an hour and a half away. Drove me to the VA hospital in Denver. And the sad part of it, Mike, it's terrible to say, but the VA doesn't really have an inpatient substance abuse program. And so I'm very, very embarrassed to say this, but they basically, I had to tell them I was thinking about hurting myself for them to help me, and which I wasn't. I had no intentions of killing myself.
But nothing else was going to keep you,
Nothing
yeah,
else.
was going to
Nothing else
yeah.
was going to get me the help that I needed.
So they
And
said, "All right,
so,
you're going to stay here."
so I stayed there
Yeah.
for 3 days. And during the intake, I find it kind of interesting because the doctor came in and on day two, he comes in and he picks up my chart and he looks at me and he goes, "Son, I've been doing this for a few years." And he goes, "The levels in your blood right now are off the charts. You should be dead."
The levels of cocaine and alcohol.
Alcohol and cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that to me, I have a bad habit of making jokes. Um,
Caught
and
him off guard, right?
this joke was not very appropriate. I said, "Well, geez, Doc, it's only Tuesday. You ought to see me on a Saturday night."
Oh,
And he just shook his head. And so for,
wow.
the whole 3 days I laid there in that hospital, after 18 years of drinking and drug abuse and prescription pill abuse, 18 years of stuff hit me in 3 days like a freight train. Stuff that I haven't thought about, stuff that I haven't processed, stuff that I would negate by using, alcohol and drugs.
Before we get into what transpired there and afterwards, let me just ask you this. In 18 years, had you ever been to a program before, to detox, to any rehab, any time at all when you said, I think I have a problem, I ought to get some help?
Now,
Not once.
like when I was active duty Army, I had to go to the Army substance abuse program because of an alcohol related issue. And it was it was a joke, honestly, as far as treatment, as far as, it was just checking the block. So it was like, okay, we'll say that we did something just so that, we have paperwork so that when you get out there in a DUI, your command team can go, "Look, we have the paperwork. We did something."
Mm-hmm. Just satisfy that
There was really
requirement,
nothing.
right? Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Um, so this event now you're in the hospital and you have had no experience with any detox recovery anything like that before, so now this is going to hit you like you said, like a brick wall. Like, now what?
Well, at the time, yeah, I like I said, I laid there for 3 days thinking about, like the passing of my grandfather. Man, very, very, very influential in my life, my young life. I never processed his death. I never processed, the birth of my son. There were so many things, that relationships, divorces, the ending of my military career. I never dealt with any of that. And so it's all hitting me all at once. And I thought, man, you know what? I think I need therapy because I need help with this. And so that started off the help, getting the help from the VA, who's been instrumental in my recovery. I know my therapist now. I have an addiction counselor that I talk to, and she's been just a shining star in my recovery on this road. It's been amazing. It's not easy, some of these things, which is why I would drink the pain away. But it's been a blessing.
Yeah, and it's almost a year, correct?
Absolutely. We're at, I can't remember how many days. It's funny that when I first started my journey into sobriety, I would count the days. I'd be like, oh, look, it's day 1, or it's day 14, or and now I'm like, I don't remember what day it is, but I mean, the day is the 27th of April. I call that my alive day. That's when I decided, or the universe decided, that I was going to take my life back. I was going to take it back from the addictive monsters that had it for all those years.
I mean, just what was in your blood, in your system, and just the detox process of that too, being so abrupt. I'm sure that was difficult. 3 days in the hospital, they weren't the easiest.
No, it was, and that's funny because I read stories, and I watch, other podcasts, and people talk about their detox. I really never went through a full-on textbook detox. Never had, the sickness. There was a couple days where I didn't feel great, but I was able to get up and go to work. I find that interesting.
That is different, right? And that's why I asked you that. Now, when you get out of the hospital, you're walking out of that building. What was going through your mind?
Oh man, I thought, I just started thinking to myself, I got a lot of stuff to do, a lot to do. And it was more along the lines of, do I have a job? I really got to go in and apologize to my employers. I've got to, I got to make sure that I've got a job. I got to make sure that my bills are paid. I got to make sure that I can see my son, and you just start building that checklist in your head of all the things that need to be done for the right here, right now.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning anything long term. I was just trying to survive the week.
The other thing too, besides your job, is friends and people that you hang out with. And I don't know if you did most of your drinking alone. It sounds like some of it was in the morning after you're getting out of bed. But when you drank, did you drink with a bunch of friends, or did you mostly drink alone?
So the veteran, I drank. I was very social when I drank.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I used to tell people all the time, oh, I hate people. I hate being around people. But I would be the ringleader at the bar, all the time. And I'm really heavily invested, or was, in the veteran community here in Colorado Springs. We've got 5 military installations around us within 60 miles. So the active duty veteran crowd is large. And with a certain group, we would always meet at a distillery or a brewery. And, the camaraderie in the veteran community was amazing. And it was very helpful, up until I decided to quit drinking. Everybody says to me, oh man, we got your back. We love you. We're proud of you. We support you. And then a week or two in, maybe 3 weeks in, it was crickets. Nobody was there. They quit calling. They quit asking about you. They quit sending you texts and phone calls. So I was pretty much alone. And to be honest with you, for some people, that would be frustrating. For me, I needed that time. I needed that time because I spent so much time in the self-hatred, destructive path of the alcoholism, and the addiction, the drug abuse, that I forgot who I was personally. I had this other persona. So it was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Chris, I couldn't remember the last time I did something because I wanted to, not because I felt like I had to with the crowd.
Yeah, it just became automatic, and with that crowd. And the thing is, that's why I asked you about your friends, because after going through something like this, you really need to detach. If you remain connected to that group, you're easily influenced, and that's a hard thing to
Absolutely.
do with people that you've known for years and years and years. To say I need to
Right.
detach, that's hard.
Well, and they would, now I say all of them, it wasn't all of them. I still have a couple of really good friends
Mm-hmm.
that supported me, that were there for me, that would volunteer to, when I got COVID, they would volunteer to bring me food. You know what I mean? They were constantly engaged, very supportive, even though they still drank, they still do. Those people, they played a very vital role for me.
Mm-hmm.
They said, look, we know you're dealing with things. You take your time, do what you need to do. Just know that we're here for you.
And that's enough.
And it was,
Yeah,
it was very, very helpful.
yeah. Well, that's good to know too, because you're right. You don't want to feel abandoned. Having some friends that keep you connected and grounded, and at least knowing that there is some people who do care,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
extremely helpful.
Well, and
Yeah.
like I said, it's not that everybody walked away. The majority of them just, there was no more commonality.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't hang out, we didn't drink together. And it's not that they're bad people or they wished me ill. It was just our paths went like this.
Yeah.
They went left and I went right, or either, however you want to look at it. We're still connected and I still care a lot about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just that I know me, I can't be in those places and do those same things.
But at the time, you enjoyed that life because of something you said earlier. You said I didn't want to get sober. You had no desire to get
Correct.
sober, so you were pretty much entrenched in that life, and
Absolutely.
you were okay with it, more than okay with it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that was the normal,
Mm-hmm.
in that tornado of a lifestyle, that was the center of the storm,
Yeah,
the eye of the storm,
yeah,
pretty much.
and it's all you knew, and I think it's
It
just
is.
you couldn't imagine anything other than that at the time.
Correct.
Now, after that hospital stay, you walked out and you say, I have a lot to do. And you have done a lot because I know you've said you've gotten involved with several different programs. And it'd be great if you'd like to talk about a few of those programs that you involve in and what you think has been helpful, not just to yourself, but you've already said, look at you already making a difference and get participating in programs, initiating different programs. So what was, I don't want to say which one is first, but what was your first initiation into saying I need to get involved with some sort of a program or group? What happened after that?
So I'll tell you the story of how everything kind of started. Um, I'm on the board of directors at the Enlisted Association, Chapter 1 here in Colorado Springs. It's a veteran organization that we've opened up to active duty and first responders as well. And it was kind of funny. We were having a ball, our annual ball, and of course everybody gets all dressed up, but it's a great time.
Now, let me just
You get
interrupt you, Chris. Is this event, was this prior to April 27th?
this was after I
After.
got sober,
All right, just
after.
gotcha. Yeah.
And I didn't want to get out of the house a lot. I didn't want to be around people because I felt weak and vulnerable to go, susceptible to going back. So anyway, I got talked into putting on a suit, getting all cleaned up. And that makes you just feel better when you do it anyway.
Yeah.
I go to this ball and this wonderful friend of mine, I love her to death. Her name is Joe. We were sitting there talking and I'd known these guys for 15, 20 years, at least 15 years. And I'm telling some of the stories and making some jokes. And Joe looks at me and she goes, she's an Army veteran as well. She looks at me and she goes, you should do this for a living. Because everybody around me is laughing. And before I realized it, I had probably 10 or 15 people standing around me listening to me make jokes about you know, how bad it was or how good it was or some of the crazy things that I'd done. And I thought, you know, there's some validity to this. I should listen to her. Well, Joe happened to work down here at Fort Carson, an Army base here in Colorado Springs. And she goes, I know somebody that you need to meet if you're willing to do it. And I said, okay. She goes, they work with the ADAP program at Fort Carson, which is once a soldier gets into or has an incident with alcohol or drugs, it's their correction program. Essentially, it's a 2-day deal. And so I'm like, sure, send me the link, not thinking, you know, that anything would come of this.
Mm-hmm.
And she sends me this link. So I call this guy. His name's Tony, and I love the guy to death. He's an amazing guy. With the ADAP program at Carson. So I call him and he goes, yep, love to have you. Let's sit down. We'll do a vetting meeting at a coffee house, and then we'll go from there. Next thing I know, I'm back at Fort Carson talking to active duty soldiers and telling a portion of this story. An experience that I'll never forget the very first time. And I think I told you, I equate this to jumping out of an airplane.
Yeah.
The first time you do it, it's great. You know, it's so exhilarating. And then the second time you're standing in the doorway going, oh crap, I know what's coming. But so I tell this, you know, I do this thing, and as I was driving away, I was leaving post that day, and I had to pull over. It was overwhelming. And excuse me, I still get a little emotional thinking about it. But the feeling that I had from trying to help these guys and gals, these soldiers, these people who have sworn to defend our way of life in foreign countries, here I am trying to help my brothers and sisters. Man, this is the thing. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was a little overwhelming,
even though
right? To think this.
What's that?
It was a little overwhelming for you to think about this kind of impact you could have.
It still is. I'm getting a little teary-eyed here. But the greatest gift that I could give is of myself and my experience. The only way I can say thank you is to try to help these folks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started thinking, man, this is a high better than any drug I've ever tried. And it's a positive change. And then it hit me. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought, you know what? It's go time, people. We got stuff to do. And so from there, I started just talking to anybody that will listen to me. Hey, let's normalize sobriety. Let's make it as popular as stopping and getting a pint after work. Yeah. And after a couple of events with Tony down at Fort Carson, he linked me into the Phoenix.org here in Colorado Springs, an amazing organization that promotes sobriety through active workout, active movement.
And Chris, just before you, I know, I'm sorry to interrupt it. Is Phoenix.org a national organization?
It is.
Okay.
It is. They've got several locations.
Okay. All right.
I'm not clear on how many they have, actually.
Yeah.
I know that it started in Chicago, and there's one in Denver, and we have a satellite here in Colorado Springs.
And if somebody wanted to find out more about it, it would be Phoenix.org.
ThePhoenix.org.
ThePhoenix.org. So that's just good information. Okay. So sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Right. I'm glad that we're able to get the information out for folks.
Yeah.
And so the Phoenix.org is a group of it's kind of hard to explain. Their mission is anybody with 48 hours of sobriety. That's all you have to have. 48 hours. Can go in and take part in these classes. Now, these classes could be mountain biking. It could be rock climbing. It could be a CrossFit workout. It could be a weight workout. All these different physical activities that, you know, people can go and participate in a positively reinforced environment. So, I mean, you're not going to get judged based on your addiction. You're not going to get judged based on your ability. You're not going to get judged based on your age, your race, any of that. Mm-hmm. It's extremely positive, and it's just an uplifting organization, and it's all to combat addiction. So I got linked in with those guys, and I went to, I just went to introduce myself, and I fell in love. I'm like,
Mhm.
man, this is awesome. And it's all derived around sobriety, and how we can empower each other and pick each other up.
Mhm.
Mike, I heard something the other day that stuck with me. It takes 6 people to be a pallbearer at your funeral, to lift you up, right?
Mhm.
What happens is 6 people a day lifted another person up, spiritually, emotionally, physically.
Ah, it's a great
Why
way
do
to
we
think
wait to
about it.
the
Yeah.
why do we wait to the end? Why can't we do it now? And
Right.
that's what they do there. And then from there, and I of course I'm going through the vetting process that the Phoenix has to become one of their volunteers, so that I can better integrate some of our veterans that may or may not have these opportunities into that program. And so it's kind of all this big spider web, and it's honestly, it's mind blowing.
Mm.
And then I thought, why stop there? That's a great, wonderful thing, but why stop there? And so I started this. I got to thinking. I'm like, as veterans, with or without addiction, we face several different challenges. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's not just limited to the veteran population.
Right.
It's more common. And then, traumatic brain injuries, physical limitations, disabilities. I thought, man, you compound that with addiction and alcoholism or drug abuse. Why does it? Why don't we start a sobriety support group? And so we started. It was, I think, 2 months ago. 2 months ago,
Mhm.
we started the Stay in the Fight sobriety support group at the Enlisted Association that
It's
meets every Monday night.
it's called
And
Stay in the Fight.
Stay in the Fight, right? And it's derived around. It's not AA, and nothing against AA, but AA just didn't work for me. And there's several other programs out there that are great and wonderful programs, and they help a lot of people, and they're valuable, and we need to continue those. But it just didn't speak to me the way that I wanted to be spoken to, or it didn't give me what I needed.
Mhm. And you're
And
right.
so I
We've
thought,
often said that there's no one recipe that works for everybody, and everybody finds their own. It's the program that works for you is the best one. But to your point, there are great programs because they do work, but
right.
everybody's different. So, is there if somebody wanted to find out more about Stay in the Fight program, do you guys have is it just local to the Colorado Springs area, or are you expanding it?
I haven't even thought of expansion yet. I'm trying to keep up, again, I'm trying to keep up and get this one off the ground. I would love to expand. Um, Number one, I don't know how. And that's one of the things that I've realized in my sobriety is there's a lot of stuff that I just don't know how to do.
Well, you've learned a
And
lot in a short time, haven't you?
I have, and it's this support group for me was one of those that I didn't want a licensed professional there. You know, I wanted it to be
a peer,
more
a peer group.
peer group, right?
Yeah.
I wanted it to be more of just a bunch of vets hanging out.
Hmm.
And if we happen to break into conversation about addiction or what somebody's struggling through, then it's your brothers and sisters sitting there talking to you. Like sitting on somebody's couch, or sitting on the front porch having a cup of coffee talking, versus, oh, I have to be here for therapy. I'm not saying therapy doesn't work, because it does, believe me. However, it's nice to have that break and get back to that camaraderie that we used to have at the bar or the distillery or the brewery without the addictive substance, without the thing that's going to end up hurting us in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the sobriety support group came from. And it's been a blessing for me personally just to be around these people that are like-minded, that have been through some of the same things that I've been through.
Yeah, and as you're helping people, certainly they're helping you. As you know, that goes.
Oh, it absolutely does. And people will tell me, they'll come up to me and tell me, thank you for doing what you do. And I'm like, no, thank you for being here and allowing me this opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, my father told me long, long time ago when I was just a wee lad, he said, son, he goes, whatever you do in life, help somebody if you can. And it's ringing true now
Mm-hmm.
more than ever.
Yeah.
And it's therapeutic for me.
Yes. Yes.
And I hope the people involved get the same what's the word I'm looking for? The same feeling or the same benefit from it.
Yeah. And you've been doing a lot of speaking. I mean, you keeping with Adapt and the Phoenix and Stay in the Fight. You've got a pretty full plate now, and you're still working. You're
Oh
still,
yeah, I work full time.
so you're squeezing all
Thank
this
you
in.
know,
Yeah.
thank God I still have a job. My employer. Oh, let me tell you about my employer. Man, they had no reason to keep me on. Um, and by all accounts, I thought I lost my job, and I probably should have when I went to the hospital. But my employer, man, you talk about amazing folks with just having grace in their hearts. They looked at me and, they're like, hey, we understand you went through a rough time. What are we going to do about it? I'm like, we're going to get on the path and we're going to get this thing going. Now I have my relationship with my employer has never been better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm at the top of my game at work, and just by the grace of God, things are working out very, very well there. And I couldn't believe that there was that much grace in the world, and they really do. They've worked with me. Oh gosh, they're forgiving of appointment times. Hey man, go take care of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
they're very understanding and just genuine, awesome people. And it takes that. It makes it so much easier to focus on your own stuff, what's going on in your own life. And
Yeah. You're
it's
fortunate.
it's really, really helpful.
Yeah. Of course. And with what you're doing with Adapt, the Phoenix, Stay in the Fight. If somebody wanted to find out more about any of those organizations, programs, is there a way people can reach you?
Absolutely. I'm on Facebook and Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
and I think and this is how bad I am at technology, Mike. I think my Instagram handle is Chris.Denton.220.
Chris
My
dot
race number.
Denton. Let's say that again, Chris.
Chris.Denton.220.
That's your Instagram. And on
And then
Facebook.
I don't even know like how to find that out. Like I need a technology genius to help me with that one. But I'm on the for the support group, the sobriety support group. They can look up TREA Chapter 1, TREA Chapter 1 on Facebook and find the information for that meetup, or
TR.
that support group.
Let's say that TREA Chapter 1
Correct.
on Facebook.
And
And
that's
of
on
course,
Facebook.
in your name, Chris Denton on Facebook. So
Absolutely.
obviously, but just because I'm sure if somebody wants to know more about that, and you said some of it, like the Phoenix is a national organization, but you're Stay in the
Right.
Fight. If maybe there's somebody interested in saying, let's replicate what you're doing, right? And they may
Oh,
be
I
in,
would love it.
yeah. So there may be something, some conversations that other people will say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. I'd like to replicate it in uh, another area."
I would absolutely
Yeah.
love it. There's no copyrights on any of that stuff. It's just something that popped into my head, and I would encourage it. As a matter of fact, I challenge them to do it. Let's
Mhm.
go.
All right. Well,
Let's
that's a
set
great
this thing on.
challenge. Yeah.
I mean, let's do it.
And we talk with so many people, especially we've had several guests on here who advocate for veterans, people who have gone through military service and gone through substance abuse and the post-traumatic stress, all kinds of things in combination that might have led to addiction or other issues that they need some support with. And I think this is
Right.
perfect. Yeah.
And it's easy. As simple minded as I am, I try to keep things very, very simple. And it's one of those that if you just get around people,
Yeah.
if you're in the room, then you have a chance. Right. That's the opening that we all need, is just to be in the room.
Step into the room, really,
And
and don't be afraid to step into the room.
right. And that's kind of been my thing, is
Yeah.
I use a lot of humor. So if you see something on my Facebook or you see me do a live video, I'm always trying to make people laugh. Laughter is contagious, and it is one of the best medicines you could ever ask for.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I find humor in what happened to me, or what the choices that I made in the past. I can laugh about it now, and I'd rather laugh than cry. And so if these things do spin off, if people want to replicate what I'm doing, or they want help with it, or any of that stuff, by all means, let me know. Um, if I can, or if they have an idea or an event that they think that they may want to hear from old Chris, I'll come out.
All right.
If I can physically do it, I will get there. I'll speak. I'll talk. But fair warning: if you invite me somewhere, I'm a hugger. I'm Southern, and I'm probably going to hug you, whether you like it or not.
Be prepared. Right.
Fair
Well,
warning.
here's another thing, Chris, and I'll put this out to the listeners also. If you wanted to get in touch with Chris, and you can find him on Facebook, feel free to get in touch with me directly, and I'll get with Chris. And so maybe there is something that people like to talk to you about, and get in touch with us at healingvoicesproject.com. There's a contact page, and feel free to get in touch with me, and I will be happy to get with Chris and set up a meeting or a phone call or whatever. But I appreciate your willingness to share what you've got going on with people, Chris. That's very helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to tell you, Mike, I really appreciate all the time that you've taken to just deal with me and work with me through this. It's just been, you have been a blessing
Well,
to so many, through the Healing Voices Project, and everybody behind the scenes. It's just, we can't share this stuff enough. We can't get the word out there, and enough. And what you do, I think, is absolutely amazing. I'm like, it's just, it's so important,
thank you, Chris.
and it's so valuable.
Thank you. Well, it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for people like you stepping up and saying, here's what we've got. And I appreciate you saying that. And I think, too, and what I like to do, obviously, you and we're going to stay in touch along the way, because I'm really
Of course.
interested in what you've got going on. But I think, too, what over some time, we'll be checking in and talking, but I'd love to have you back and see how things are progressing. And I think you're going to have a lot more to
Absolutely.
share, and a lot more success stories to share as well.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. And like I've told you before, anything that I can do, you know, I'll do just about anything except for jumping out of planes. I don't do that anymore.
Be careful what you offer.
uh,
You know,
Ice bucket challenge, not so much.
yeah.
Jumping out of planes, not so much. But anything else, I'm in.
I'll just tell you a quick little funny story about jumping out of an airplane. Many years ago, I went to jump out of an airplane. I've done it once since, but that was the first time, so I can relate to the first time attitude and the second time attitude. But the first time I did it, I
Yep.
was so excited, and I was just wound up with excitement. And I'm in the plane, and we're up 10,000 feet, and they open up the big door, and you're got the open air, and of course there was a guy. It was a tandem jump, so the guy was strapped behind me, and I looked at
Right.
him, and I said, you know what's crazy? I'm so excited about this. I don't feel nervous one bit. I don't feel any nervousness. I'm just excited to do this. And the guy looked at me and he said, let me just tell you something. You're jumping out of an airplane. Nervousness is a sign of intelligence. Suddenly, I
Well,
just felt like, oh shit.
whoops.
Yeah, wait a minute here. Maybe I ought to be thinking about this more. Uh, and so
That's great. I
we
love it.
we jumped, and then of course the second time I'm up there, and I won't say I was a wreck, but I was not. I was a little more nervous, because I knew
Absolutely.
what was ahead of me. So you
Well, and
reminded
that,
me of that. Yeah.
that story is it's so true.
Hmm.
Every time I go out to go somewhere, get ready to go somewhere to speak or to interact with people or to lead a group,
Yeah.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified. But you'll the thing of it the thing of it that I love, right? The aspect that I love about being terrified and being nervous is the adrenaline, and it's knowing that whatever I do today is going to help somebody, to combat what I've been through. And so the nerves and the terror kind of start to dissipate, and then we get mission focused. And the people that you meet, the stories that you hear, oh man, it just fills your heart. And it's like, okay, now that right there was the greatest adrenaline jump that I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
It's better than any high imaginable.
I agree. I agree. And but I think you will. The nervousness goes away. I mean, it in the beginning, and then I think not even minutes, but seconds into it, you just find yourself going full throttle. Well, Chris, we're starting to run out of our time. I wish I could just talk to you all morning, but I really appreciate you taking time this morning to join us. We'll keep talking. We'll stay in touch. And again, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to get in touch with Chris at all, you can get with Chris on Facebook or Instagram, but also feel free to reach out to me at healingvoicesproject.com, and we'll find a way to get with Chris. Chris, your story is amazing, and I look forward to talking to you again. All right?
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you soon. Thanks.